Hello, and welcome to Whispers in the Dark. We delve into the shadows of the human psyche, exploring stories that remind us that evil can wear the most convincing of masks. The tale we are about to unfold is a particularly chilling one. It's a story of love, betrayal, and a darkness so profound it consumed an entire family. Before we begin, if you find yourself drawn to the mysteries that lie beneath the surface of everyday life, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing these unsettling stories to light. Now, turn down the lights and listen closely to the case of the future son-in-law who brutally slaughtered his wife's entire family. The Harrington family was the stuff of local legend, the kind of family that seemed to have been plucked from the pages of a glossy magazine and placed in the heart of a sleepy, affluent New England town. Their home, a sprawling colonial with pristine white columns and a wraparound porch, sat on a manicured lawn that sloped gently down to a shimmering lake. It was a house that seemed to exude a quiet, confident happiness, a reflection of the family that lived within its walls. George Harrington was a man of medicine, a cardiac surgeon whose skilled hands had mended countless broken hearts. He was a man of routine and precision, yet he possessed a warmth that instantly put his patients at ease. His wife, Eleanor, was his perfect complement. Where George was grounded and pragmatic, Eleanor was effervescent and artistic. She was a philanthropist, a patron of the local art scene, and the driving force behind the town's most successful charity events. Her laughter was infectious, her spirit boundless. They had 2 children, Clara and Leo. Clara, at 26, was a recent law school graduate, sharp and ambitious, with her father's intellect and her mother's charm. She was the golden child, the one who had always exceeded expectations, her future a bright, unwavering path. Leo, for years her junior, was the dreamer, the artist, with a perpetually paint-stained wardrobe and a mind that wandered through fantastical landscapes. He was the family's gentle, free-spirited soul. Their lives were a tapestry of comfort, love, and mutual respect. They were the embodiment of the American dream, a family seemingly untouched by the harsh realities of the world. And then Julian came into their lives. Clara brought him home one crisp autumn evening, the air filled with the scent of wood smoke and decaying leaves. Julian was, in a word, perfect. He was devastatingly handsome, with a chiseled jaw, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that could disarm even the most cynical of hearts. He was a successful entrepreneur, the founder of a burgeoning tech company that was poised to revolutionize the world of data security. He was charismatic, intelligent, and impeccably dressed. He charmed George and Eleanor from the moment he walked through their door. He engaged George in a spirited discussion about the latest advancements in medical technology, his knowledge of the subject both surprising and impressive. He praised Eleanor's taste in art, his observations insightful and genuine. He listened intently as they spoke, his gaze unwavering, making them feel as though they were the most fascinating people he had ever met. With Leo, he was equally adept. He didn't feign an interest in Leo's art. He seemed to genuinely appreciate it. He spoke of the power of art to transcend the mundane, to touch the soul in ways that words could not. He even commissioned a piece from Leo for his office, a gesture that both surprised and delighted the young artist. But it was his devotion to Clara that truly won the Harringtons over. He adored her, that much was clear. The way he looked at her, the way he touched her, the way he spoke of her, it was as if she were the center of his universe. He was attentive, supportive, and utterly smitten. He was, in every conceivable way, the perfect future son-in-law. As the months passed, Julian became an integral part of the Harrington family. He was a regular at their Sunday dinners, his laughter echoing through the halls of their home. He joined them on their weekend sailing trips, his easy confidence a welcome addition to their family dynamic. He was the son George had always wanted, the brother Leo had never had. He told them stories of a difficult childhood, an orphan who had been shuffled from one foster home to another. He spoke of his struggles, his determination to make something of himself, to rise above the circumstances of his birth. His stories were heartbreaking, yet inspiring, and they only served to deepen the Harringtons' admiration for him. Here was a man who had overcome adversity, a man who had forged his own destiny. He was a testament to the power of the human spirit. But beneath the surface of this perfect facade, subtle red flags began to appear, so small and insignificant that they were easily dismissed. He had a way of isolating Clara from her friends, subtly at first. He would plan elaborate weekend getaways, whisking her away to romantic destinations, leaving her with little time for anyone else. He would make casual, offhanded remarks about her friends, planting seeds of doubt in her mind, making her feel as though he were the only one who truly understood her. Leo was the first to feel a sense of unease. He found Julian almost too perfect, his charm a little too polished. There was a coldness in his eyes, a fleeting shadow that would appear and disappear in the blink of an eye. He tried to talk to Clara, but she dismissed his concerns as jealousy. "You're just not used to sharing me," she would say, a gentle chiding in her voice. George, too, had a fleeting moment of doubt. Julian had proposed a business deal, an investment in a new tech startup that promised astronomical returns. It seemed almost too good to be true. But Julian's explanations were so convincing, his projections so well-researched, that George's skepticism quickly faded. He chalked it up to his own cautious nature, his reluctance to embrace the fast-paced, high-risk world of tech startups. The engagement party was a lavish affair, a testament to the Harringtons' love for their daughter and their excitement for her future. The sprawling backyard of their home was transformed into a fairy tale setting, with twinkling lights strung through the trees and the soft glow of candles illuminating the faces of their friends and family. Julian was at his most charming that night. He mingled with the guests, his easy confidence and infectious laughter drawing people to him like moths to a flame. He gave a moving speech, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke of his love for Clara and his gratitude to the Harringtons for welcoming him into their family. "You are the family I never had," he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, "and I will spend the rest of my life making your daughter happy." The Harringtons beamed with pride, their hearts full of love and hope for the future. They were on top of the world, completely unaware of the darkness that was about to descend upon them. The party ended late, the last of the guests departing in a flurry of well-wishes and goodbyes. The house was quiet now, the only sounds the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The family retired to their rooms, their minds filled with happy memories of the evening. But as they slept, blissfully unaware of the evil that had taken root in their home, Julian stood in the darkened hallway. The charming smile was gone, replaced by a cold, predatory gaze. He looked at the family portraits on the wall, his eyes lingering on each smiling face. A strange, chilling smile played on his lips, a smile that held no warmth, no joy, only a deep, unsettling malevolence. The perfect facade was beginning to crack, and in the darkness of the Harrington home, a monster was waiting to be unleashed. The wedding was just weeks away, and the Harrington home was a whirlwind of activity. Dress fittings, cake tastings, and seating arrangements filled their days. But amidst the joyful chaos, a subtle shift occurred. Julian's perfect facade, once so impenetrable, began to show hairline cracks. His control over Clara intensified, his love taking on a possessive, suffocating quality. He would call her incessantly, his voice laced with anxiety if she didn't answer immediately. He questioned her about her conversations with friends, his jealousy a simmering undercurrent in his seemingly innocent inquiries. His temper, once so carefully concealed, would flare at the slightest perceived slight. A waiter who was too friendly, a male colleague who lingered too long in conversation, anything could set him off. These flashes of anger were always followed by lavish apologies, expensive gifts, and declarations of his undying love, leaving Clara feeling confused, guilty, and increasingly isolated. Leo's suspicions, once a vague unease, had crystallized into a cold, hard certainty. He watched Julian with a hawk's eye, his artist's perception picking up on the subtle dissonances in his behavior. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes, the way his body language would shift in an instant from relaxed to coiled, like a predator about to strike. Driven by a desperate need to protect his sister, Leo began to dig into Julian's past. He spent hours online, searching for any information about the man who was about to become his brother-in-law. But his search came up empty. It was as if Julian had no digital footprint, no history before he had met Clara. There were no old social media profiles, no school records, no mention of him in any public databases. It was as if he had simply materialized out of thin air. Meanwhile, a storm was brewing in George's professional life. The hospital where he had worked for over 2 decades was facing a major financial crisis. It was revealed that a significant portion of the hospital's endowment, which George had managed, had been lost in a series of high-risk, speculative investments. These were the very investments that Julian had so enthusiastically recommended, the ones that had promised such astronomical returns. George was devastated. His reputation, once so sterling, was now in tatters. He faced professional ruin, the possibility of lawsuits, and the shame of having let down his colleagues and his community. And through it all, Julian was there, a pillar of support, his voice a soothing balm on George's frayed nerves. He offered to help, to use his financial acumen to try and recoup some of the losses. He loaned George a significant amount of money, a gesture that seemed so generous, so selfless, that it only served to further indebt the family to him, both financially and emotionally. Leo, however, was not fooled. He saw Julian's offer for what it was. A calculated move, another thread in the intricate web of control he was weaving around his family. One evening, while searching through some of Julian's old investment prospectuses, Leo found it. A small, seemingly insignificant detail, a reference to a past business venture that contradicted one of Julian's stories about his past. It was the loose thread he had been looking for. He confronted Julian that night, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. At first, Julian tried to charm his way out of it, his easy smile and plausible explanations flowing effortlessly. But Leo persisted, his questions sharp and pointed. And then, for a fleeting moment, Julian's mask slipped. The charming, charismatic facade dissolved, revealing a flash of cold, reptilian rage. His eyes, once so warm and engaging, were now glacial, devoid of any emotion save for a chilling, predatory gleam. He grabbed Leo by the arm, his grip like a vice. "You should have left it alone," he hissed, his voice a low, menacing growl. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." The threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. And in that moment, Leo knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that they were all in terrible danger. He tried to warn his family, his words tumbling out in a frantic, desperate torrent. But they were too blinded by their trust in Julian, too consumed by their own mounting problems to listen. Clara accused him of being jealous, of trying to sabotage her happiness. His parents, their judgment clouded by stress and their gratitude to Julian, dismissed his concerns as the product of an overactive imagination. The night before the wedding, the family gathered for a prenuptial dinner. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken anxieties, the air crackling with an almost unbearable tension. They moved through the motions of a celebratory meal, their laughter forced, their smiles strained. It was a grotesque parody of a happy family gathering. Later that night, as the house fell silent, Julian enacted his horrific plan. He moved through the darkened hallways with a chilling precision, a silent, methodical predator. He was a ghost in the house he had so expertly infiltrated, a phantom of death in the home that had welcomed him with open arms. The murders were brutal, calculated, each one tailored to the victim. He started with George and Eleanor, their lives extinguished as they slept, a final, merciful act of oblivion. Leo was next. He fought back, his artist's hands now tools of a desperate, primal struggle for survival. But he was no match for Julian's cold, efficient brutality. And then there was Clara. He saved her for last, his bride-to-be, the centerpiece of his elaborate, twisted game. He woke her gently, his voice a soft, loving whisper. And in the dim light of the bedroom, she saw him, the man she loved, the man she was about to marry, his face a mask of cold, triumphant rage, his clothes stained with the blood of her family. The horrifying realization dawned on her, a scream catching in her throat. Her perfect future, her perfect love, it was all a lie, a carefully constructed illusion designed to lure her and her family to their doom. Her final moments were a symphony of terror and despair, a silent, agonizing scream that would forever echo in the halls of the Harrington mansion. The first light of dawn broke over the silent, blood-soaked house. The wedding decorations, a cruel, ironic testament to the shattered dreams of a family, were still in place. The only sound was the gentle, persistent ringing of the unanswered telephone, a final unanswered plea from a world that was now forever out of reach. The horrific scene was discovered by the wedding planner, her cheerful arrival shattered by a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the quiet, suburban neighborhood. The Harrington mansion, once a symbol of happiness and success, was now a gruesome tableau of unimaginable violence. The brutality of the murders shocked even the most seasoned detectives. The calculated savagery of the crime seemed a chilling testament to the depravity of the killer. Julian, the grieving fiancé, the beloved future son-in-law, was nowhere to be found. His car was gone, his belongings vanished. At first, the police were baffled. There seemed to be no motive for such a savage crime. The Harringtons were a beloved family, with no known enemies. The murders were not a robbery gone wrong. Nothing of value had been taken. It was a crime of pure, unadulterated hatred. As the investigation deepened, a figure from Julian's hidden past emerged. A grizzled, world-weary journalist named Franklin Reed. A man who had spent the better part of his career tracking a phantom-like con artist and murderer. He had a wealth of information about a man who changed his identity like a chameleon, a man who preyed on wealthy families, a man who left a trail of devastation in his wake. He provided the police with the key to unlocking Julian's true identity, a name that was not Julian at all, but a litany of aliases, each one attached to a story of heartbreak and financial ruin. The investigation, aided by Franklin's information, finally revealed Julian's true motive. He was not a successful entrepreneur. He was a sociopath with a deep-seated, pathological hatred for the wealthy and privileged. His entire life had been a performance, a long, elaborate con to infiltrate families like the Harringtons, to gain their trust, to strip them of their wealth, and then to annihilate them, taking a sadistic, godlike pleasure in their downfall. It was revealed that George's financial ruin was not an accident, but a deliberate act of sabotage, a carefully orchestrated plan to bring the proud, successful surgeon to his knees. Julian had reveled in George's despair, had savored his fear and his shame. The murders were the final, triumphant act in his twisted play, the ultimate expression of his power and his contempt. A nationwide manhunt for Julian ensued. His face was plastered on every news channel, his handsome features now a chilling mask of evil. He was finally tracked down to a small, grimy apartment in a rundown part of the country, a stark contrast to the opulence he had so recently inhabited. He was living under a new name, had already begun to scout his next victims, a new family to charm, to manipulate, and to destroy. The capture was tense, a standoff between a man with nothing to lose and a police force determined to bring him to justice. But in the end, the monster was brought down, his reign of terror finally over. The trial was a media sensation. The courtroom was packed, the public hungry for a glimpse of the man who had so expertly worn the mask of a perfect gentleman. But the charming, charismatic Julian was gone. In his place was a cold, remorseless killer, his eyes devoid of any emotion, his face a blank canvas of indifference. He showed no remorse, no regret, only a chilling, arrogant pride in his horrific deeds. He was found guilty on all counts, his crime so heinous that the jury took less than an hour to reach a verdict. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, his name now synonymous with a new kind of evil, an evil that could hide in plain sight, that could smile and charm and love, all while plotting the most unspeakable of crimes. The Harrington mansion, once a beacon of light and happiness, now stands empty and for sale, a silent monument to a family destroyed by a devil in disguise. The once manicured lawns are now overgrown. The paint on the white columns is peeling, the windows like vacant, staring eyes. It is a house of ghosts, a house of shattered dreams, a house where the whispers of a horrific past will forever linger in the air. The melancholic piano music returns, the final notes hanging in the air like a question mark. The screen fades to black. The most terrifying monsters are the ones that live inside our heads. And sometimes, they are the ones we invite into our homes. The verdict was in, the judge's gavel sounding like a final gunshot in a brutal war. Julian, or as the world now knew him, Thomas Kane, was led away. His face a chilling mask of placid composure, disappearing from the courtroom and from public view. For the outside world, the story was over. But for the small New England town where the Harringtons had been the heart and soul, the silence Thomas Kane left behind was more deafening than any sensational news report. The media storm receded as quickly as it had arrived. The satellite trucks rolled out of the town hall parking lot. The reporters packed their notebooks and microphones, leaving the town to reckon with what had been done to it. And in that quiet, a different kind of sickness began to spread. Suspicion. Neighbors looked at each other over picket fences, an unspoken question hanging in the air. How did we not know? How could the man who had eaten at their dinner tables, who had charmed them at cocktail parties, who had shaken hands and smiled with such flawless sincerity, have been a monster? Every memory of his grace was now tainted with a morbid hue. Every compliment he'd ever given now echoed like a taunt. The town had been violated on a fundamental level. Trust, the bedrock of their small community, was shattered. People began locking their doors, something they had rarely done before. Friendly conversations at the grocery store became stilted, reserved. A shadow had fallen over them, a reminder that evil didn't always come with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it came with a perfect smile and an attractive investment opportunity. For those closest to the Harringtons, the pain was deeper, complicated by the corrosive acid of guilt. Sarah, Clara's best friend since college, was tormented by memories. She remembered the canceled plans, Clara explaining that Julian had planned a surprise getaway. She remembered Julian's subtle remarks about Clara's friends, the tiny seeds of doubt so expertly planted to isolate her. At the time, Sarah had seen it as passionate romance, the harmless jealousy of a man deeply in love. Now she saw it for what it was, the beginning of a siege. I should have seen it, she would tell herself in the sleepless nights, her voice a haunting whisper in her empty apartment. I should have protected her. Dr. Alan Carmichael, George Harrington's colleague and closest friend for 30 years, faced a different kind of demon. He had not only lost his friend but was left to clean up the professional wreckage Thomas Kane had created. The hospital was reeling. Donors had pulled out, the institution's reputation stained by the financial scandal. Alan had to stand before the board, before the staff, and try to explain how a man as brilliant as George could have been so brutally deceived. He defended his friend's legacy, insisting that George was a victim, too, but the whispers persisted. The murders were so horrific, so sensational, that they eclipsed everything else, turning the financial tragedy into a minor footnote in a monstrous story. But perhaps no one was more deeply affected than Franklin Reed. The old journalist had spent a decade hunting this phantom, and his victory felt profoundly hollow. He had put a monster behind bars, but it couldn't bring the Harrington family back. He didn't leave town after the trial. He felt a strange obligation, a self-imposed penance to bear witness to the aftermath of the beast he had hunted. Franklin began a new project. He wasn't writing about Thomas Kane. The world knew enough about him. Instead, he began to write about his victims and not just the Harringtons. He traveled the country, following the ghost trail of Kane's destruction. He found a family in California who had lost their life savings, the father having taken his own life in shame. He found a widow in Florida who had given Kane her entire inheritance, now living in poverty. He uncovered stories of broken friendships, bankrupted businesses, and lives permanently scarred by the sociopath's masterclass in manipulation. As he pieced the stories together, a chilling pattern emerged. Kane didn't just target the wealthy, he targeted the good. He sought out families whose foundations were built on love and trust, because he knew those were the easiest structures to infiltrate and the most satisfying to demolish. He didn't just want their money, he wanted their souls. He wanted to take the very things that made them good, their generosity, their openness, their faith in the decency of others, and turn them into weapons against them. Meanwhile, the Harrington mansion stood as a tomb. The house, once a symbol of elegant happiness, was now derelict, sealed off by police tape. Weeds began to choke the manicured lawns. The paint began to peel. It became a morbid attraction. Teenagers would dare each other to run up to the porch and touch the front door. Cars would slow down as they passed, the occupants staring at the vacant windows, trying to imagine the horror that had unfolded within. The town was divided on what to do with it. Some wanted it torn down, the scar erased from their landscape. Others argued it should be preserved as a reminder, a warning. In the end, it just sat there, trapped in legal and emotional limbo, a ghost of wood and brick that haunted the town. Franklin Reed published his series not in a national paper but in the local one. He wanted the story to belong to the community it had hurt the most. The articles were titled simply, "The People They Were." Each installment focused on a member of the Harrington family: George, the dedicated doctor; Eleanor, the compassionate patron of the arts; Leo, the gentle, artistic soul; and Clara, the brilliant young lawyer with a future of limitless potential. He wrote of their accomplishments, their passions, their small acts of kindness. The story changed the conversation. Instead of whispering about the monster, people began talking about the family. They shared memories. A scholarship fund was started in Clara's name. The local art gallery held a retrospective exhibit of Leo's work. The hospital dedicated a new wing to Dr. George Harrington. Slowly, painfully, the town began the process of healing, not by forgetting, but by choosing how to remember. They were taking the narrative back from the murderer and giving it back to his victims. But the scars remained, and everyone in town knew they would carry them forever. A permanent reminder that sometimes, the wolf isn't at the door. He is invited inside, given a seat at the dinner table, and treated like one of the family. 5 years is both a long time and no time at all. It was long enough for the grass to grow over the old foundation where the Harrington mansion once stood. Long enough for the town's deepest wounds to scar over, leaving pale pink lines instead of open gashes. But it was short enough for the memory to remain vivid, for the name Thomas Kane to still be capable of casting a pall of awkward silence over a crowded room. The house was finally gone. After years of debate, an anonymous benefactor, whom many suspected was Franklin Reed, bought the property and donated it to the town. It had been turned into a memorial park. There were no statues or plaques, just a quiet garden with 4 maple trees, one for each life lost, and a single bench that overlooked the lake. It was a place of serenity, but also a place of remembrance. Franklin Reed, now well into his 70s, was writing his last book. It was the culmination of his life's work, a deep exploration into the psychology of the predator he helped unmask. To finish it, he knew he had to do one last thing. He had to face the monster one more time. The maximum security prison was a world away from the quaint New England town. It was a place of concrete, steel, and controlled desperation. Franklin felt a chill as he sat in the stark, windowless visitation room, a thick pane of plexiglass separating him from the man who was escorted in, dressed in an orange jumpsuit. Thomas Kane looked older. There were lines around his eyes, a touch of gray at his temples. But the eyes were the same, still blue, still intelligent, and still terrifyingly empty. He smiled when he saw Franklin, a smile that held no warmth. "Mr. Reed," Kane said, his voice calm and relaxed, as if they were meeting for coffee. "I was wondering when you'd come. How is the book?" "It's almost finished," Franklin replied, keeping his own voice neutral. "I had a few final questions." "Ask away," Kane said, leaning back in his chair. "I'm an open book." Franklin had prepared for this. He knew Kane would try to control the conversation, to play his psychological games. He decided to go straight to the heart of it. "I never understood why the Harringtons. It wasn't just the money. With you, it was never just about the money. Why them? Kane's smile widened. Why? Because they were the epitome. They had it all. The love, the respect, the perfect house, the perfect children. They were a fortress of upper-class self-satisfaction. And I wanted to prove that any fortress, no matter how well built, can be leveled from the inside with just the right tools. And Clara was your tool? Clara wasn't a tool, Kane said, and for the first time, a flicker of something annoyance flashed in his eyes. She was the key. She was smart, strong, but she had the one vulnerability that all people like her have. She believed she deserved perfection, and I gave her perfection. My gift was so perfect that she was willing to ignore every instinct, every red flag, to hold on to it. He paused, studying Franklin through the glass. You know what the best part was? The final moments. The realization. When George realized the man he trusted had orchestrated his ruin. When Leo, in his panic, realized his little suspicions were all true. And Clara, oh Clara, that moment in her eyes, when love turned to pure terror. When she looked at me and didn't see her fiancé, but the end of everything. That was art. That was my masterpiece. Franklin felt a wave of nausea rise in his throat, but he kept his face impassive. You feel nothing? No remorse? No guilt? Kane laughed, a dry, mirthless sound. Guilt is a construct invented by the weak to control the strong. Do you feel guilty when you swat a spider, Mr. Reed? I saw the world's rotten power structure and I made a correction. The Harringtons were a correction. I am a force of equilibrium. They spoke for another hour. Kane never wavered. He was an impenetrable wall of narcissism and malevolence. He offered no tragic backstory as an explanation. His evil seemed innate, pure and undiluted. He was a glitch in the fabric of humanity. As the visitation time ended, Kane stood. You know, Mr. Reed, he said casually, the funny thing is, even in here I can still work. There are guards with families, with problems. Everyone has a key. You just have to find the right lock. The veiled threat hung in the air as the guards led Kane away. Franklin Reed left the prison feeling 100 years older. The evil he had just confronted was so absolute, so banal, it shook him to his core. He drove back to the town, pulling his car over on the road that overlooked the Harrington Memorial Park. It was near dusk. A young family was playing on the grass. A child's laughter carried on the crisp air. Sarah, Clara's friend, was sitting on the bench, not crying, but simply being, her face peaceful. Franklin realized that Thomas Kane was wrong. He may have leveled a fortress, but he hadn't destroyed the foundation. Love, community, resilience, those were things he could never touch. He had created a horrific void, but life had rushed in to fill it. He started his car and drove away, not looking back. His book had its ending. The monster was caged, but the real battle was never about defeating him. It was about surviving him. And in the quiet peace of a small town that was healing, in the laughter of a child in a park where a tragedy once stood, Franklin Reed found his answer. Thomas Kane may have written the final chapter of the Harrington family, but it was the survivors who got to tell the rest of the story. And that was a story no monster could ever erase.